Does sitting cause sciatica and low back pain? Some health experts are saying that sitting is the new smoking. In this video, I'll share with you some aspects of the effects of sitting on lower back pain and how we can try to avoid it. Hi, I'm David Fitzgerald, practicing physiotherapist for over 30 years, specialising in managing low back pain. If this is the first time you've seen our videos, please subscribe to the channel to get weekly updates and health tips related to physiotherapy. We see patients every day in clinic with low back pain and sciatica that's been caused by prolonged sitting. But what's the big deal with sitting? Why can it cause such a problem? It seems contradictory because after all, sitting is a pretty relaxed position which doesn't appear to cause much demands from the energy systems. So why could it be so detrimental? In this video I'd like to share a bit more detail as to how that process of damage to the spine can occur. Generally we think of the intervertebral disc as a shock absorber, and just remember that the disc is the structure that sits between the two vertebrae. So here we have two vertebrae and the intervertebral disc, and here we have the spinal cord and the nerve roots that come off it, and in this case this is part of the sciatic nerve. So the main function of the disc is to act as a shock absorber. In the normal course of events, when we move regularly, the position of each vertebra changes, and this has a pressurizing effect on the disc, but the pressure is constantly changing. I often describe it to patients as a bellows effect or an accordion effect, and I can't play the accordion, by the way, but it's these regular changes in pressure that occur with movement which are normally what are required to maintain the health of the intervertebral disc. And what happens when we sustain a fixed seated position for long periods of time is that essentially the disc becomes compressed and squashed because the water and the fluid in the disc bed gets squeezed out slowly over time. There's a constant changing of the amount of fluid in the disc throughout the course of the day. In fact, many of you will have recalled the old stories about being up to an inch taller in the morning when the pressure has been taken off your spine at night, and there's definitely an element of truth in that. So the pressure and the water content in the disc changes a lot through the course of the day, but in order to maintain the health of the disc we need regular changes of position, because if you sustain the pressure on the disc and you squeeze the water content out, then the next thing that happens is that the fibers of the disc start to become stressed and strained. Now you will recall in another video we described that the disc has two parts: a central portion called the nucleus pulposus, which is the jelly-like fluid material, and then it's surrounded by layers of ligamentous rings, if you like, which are called the annulus fibrosus. And what happens in sustained sitting over periods of time when the fluid content is squeezed out of the disc is that these outer portions of the ligaments that form the annulus fibrosus start to become stretched and strained, and if that persists over a period of time they can actually become damaged, a bit like spraining an ankle. So the ligament fibers become elongated and strained, and they can become inflamed. And if that process is beginning to happen, people will usually find that they're a bit stiff and sore when they get out of a seated position, and that can then progress to just feeling a bit uncomfortable when they're in the seated position, and that can then spiral to not tolerating sitting at all. And that's generally the sort of the stages in the process of progressive pressure on the disc with some internal changes, but that doesn't necessarily have to involve pressure on the sciatic nerve. The pressure on the nerve only occurs when the outer casing of the disc, the annulus fibrosus, is broken down, and that then allows a bulging of the disc to push out through the outer wall and press on the sciatic nerve, and that's when we have our full-blown sciatica. And that is dependent on the size of the bulge, so you can get a continuous pressure on the sciatic nerve, which is a continuous pain in the leg, or it may be more intermittent and come and go depending on how long you sit for and whether you have the opportunity to change your seated position regularly. So the slightly contradictory thing here is that in a nice, soft, easy, relaxed position, you think, well, there's not much pressure on the system here, but unfortunately when we measure and scientists measure the pressure within the disc, the pressure is quite high in a seated position, and obviously if we spend long periods of time in jobs, secretarial work or computer programming or even playing computer games for long periods of time, we just don't get that regular change of position. So that unfortunately then leads to a situation of gradual breakdown of the intervertebral disc, and that's usually a slow process. It usually doesn't happen quickly and suddenly. So in another video I'll share some information about the effects of different seating positions on the intervertebral disc, but today I just wanted to give some basic information about the effect of static loading on the disc and how it influences the viscoelastic behavior of the disc, which is a topic we've talked about in previous videos, and we'll discuss it in a bit more detail in a subsequent video. I hope you found that information helpful. Please give us a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments section. We'll do our best to answer them for you. I'll see you again on another video. Bye for now.